Welcome on board the Rich Planet Starship, broadcasting from North London. I'm Richard D. Hall, and I'm joined today by Muad'Dib. Welcome, Muad'Dib.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, now the last time we spoke about your trial,
Yes.
which you won, and you were found innocent of all charges. And in that trial, they tried to convict you of trying to pervert the course of justice. And in that trial, you provided two broad lines of defence. The first one, which was quite profound, that the Queen has no jurisdiction over you. The Crown, you don't come under the remit of their power, shall we say.
Yeah.
Now that defence in itself had two prongs to it.
Yes.
The first was that the Stone of Scone, on which the Queen is coronated, you believe is a fake stone, so therefore you believe that the whole coronation ceremony of the monarch, i.e. the Queen, is fake, therefore she's not the Queen. Because that was the first argument. And we're going to go through that story now, and really we need to go back quite a few years to chart this. Thousands of years. I mean, it goes back to Jacob.
That's right.
So tell us who Jacob was and what his...
We start off with Abraham, and then who offered to sacrifice his miracle child Isaac on Mount Moriah, which is now part of Jerusalem, which is where Solomon's temple was built, over that spot, because it was the holiest spot on earth, because that's where Abraham had offered to sacrifice Isaac.
And this is currently still the most contested religious area in the world, really.
Yeah, the Dome of the Rock, the mosque, the Dome of the Rock, which was built by Caliph Omar, stands now over that spot. Right. The temple, the first and second temples were destroyed. The first temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon's troops, and the second temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. And then in the 7th century AD, Caliph Omar built the Dome of the Rock, the mosque, over the spot where the temple had been. And that's part of the contention today in Israel in Judea, between the Jews and the Muslims.
Now, at some point in time, the temple that was there housed the Ark of the Covenant, is that?
Yes, and Jacob's pillar, which has become the coronation stone, and the throne of David. Right. And Elizabeth is descended.
So this stone, which goes back to Jerusalem.
Yeah. It started in Bethel. If you read the Bible story, Jacob took a stone for his pillow, and whilst using it as his pillow, he had visions of what is known as Jacob's ladder, of angels ascending and descending from heaven. And he realized when he awoke, he said that God is in this place, and I knew it not. And he then renamed the place. Originally it was called Luz, L-U-Z, and he changed the name of the place to Bethel, which means the house of God, Bethel, house of God. And he named the stone Bethel also. And he raised up the stone in the morning, and he anointed it with oil, and named it Bethel, which is the house of God.
So the stone predates the Ark of the Covenant?
But Jacob had his name changed at that place also, where the stone was, had his name changed from Jacob, which means the supplanter, because he supplanted his brother Esau for the birthright with a bowl of soup.
What year are we talking about here with the creation of this stone?
It's probably around 2,000 years BC.
Right, okay, so the very early part
or
of the Bible.
1500, between 1500 and 2000.
Right. And is this, this is the Queen's, or was the Queen's coronation stone? We'll come on to what happened to it. Is this accepted by archaeologists that this stone from 2000 BC is supposedly the stone that the Queen gets coronated on? Is that accepted knowledge then?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So at some point the Ark of the Covenant's created. Well, tell us the story of the stone and its journey, how it eventually got to Jerusalem then.
Jacob had his name changed at Bethel to Israel, champion of God, because he was going to champion God's cause in the world. And he had 12 sons who fathered the 12 tribes of Israel. And most people probably know about Joseph and the coat of many colors. Joseph was the 11th son and was Jacob's favorite, Israel's favorite son. most people don't understand the story of the coat of many colours and why giving that coat to Joseph upset all of his brothers, because he was the youngest. When it talks about the coat of many colours, it's not talking about the colours of the spectrum. Okay? Each of the 12 sons had a tribal standard, an emblem, a flag, if you like, or colours as they're known in the military. Each regiment has its colours, it has a flag, it has an emblem. Okay? And what Jacob Israel did was he made a coat out of all the colours of his sons, and then gave it to Jacob, which signified that Jacob was going to be the leader, was going to rule over the other sons, the other tribes, as they became. And of course the others, as he was the youngest at the time, that really upset his elder brothers.
Right.
And so they sold him into slavery in Egypt, which most people also know from the Bible if they read the Bible. And through a set of circumstances in Egypt, he became the Pharaoh's right-hand man. He was the second most powerful man in Egypt. And then there was a famine in Egypt and throughout the Middle East. And so Jacob Israel and his sons and their families needed food. And Joseph had, in becoming the second in command to the Pharaoh, he had designed a plan in Egypt where there were 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine. And so that was the dream that the Pharaoh had that Joseph interpreted for him. And so they saved all the spare food from the 7 years of plenty to cover the 7 years of famine. And so they had stored all the food, they had plenty of food, and people came from all around to buy food from Egypt. And so Jacob Israel sent his sons down into Egypt to buy food from the Egyptians, from the Pharaoh. And they went, and it's all in the Bible. They went, and Joseph recognized his brothers, but because he had been a young boy when they sold him into slavery, and he was now a man, and he dressed as an Egyptian, and he spoke Egyptian rather than their language, they didn't realize who he was, but he recognized them.
So the stone was taken to Egypt then?
Yes. Eventually what happened was that Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers. And he said he forgave them, and he said, I want you to bring my father and all of your families and come down into Egypt, and I will provide for you, and everything will be fine. So at that point, they put metal staples into the ends of the stone, and then from the staples there were two twisted figure-of-8 pieces of metal and a ring in each one of those, so that a pole could be passed through each ring across the top of the stone. And so at least two, because of the weight of it, at least two people on either side of the stone would carry it.
We've got a photograph which we're going to talk about later.
Yes, we have. And so when they went, this stone was so precious to them because of what had happened to Jacob Israel. He had his name changed, he met God, all of the rest of it. It went down into Egypt with them. Okay, and they spent time in Egypt, and when that Pharaoh died, another Pharaoh came along who didn't know Joseph. And if you read the Bible story, they became slaves to the Egyptians. And they spent 400 years in slavery in Egypt until they were brought out by Moses.
By Moses.
Yeah.
And this is where the Ark of the Covenant comes in.
Yes, exactly, yes. So when they came out of slavery after 400 years, when they came out of slavery in Egypt, they also brought out the stone, again, carried on the pole. And they had spent 400 years under man-made laws in slavery, which is similar to what is happening in the world today, that everybody's a debt slave one way or the other to the rich and powerful, to the monarchy, basically, and their friends. And it was the same in Egypt. And the people spent 400 years there in that slavery to teach them that, to convince them that that's the wrong way to live. And that they were suffering under it. And so They were then brought out with Moses to Sinai, Horeb in Sinai, where they were given God's perfect royal laws of liberty. And
the Ten Commandments.
They were also given, yes, but this is something that is hidden from people purposefully. They always tell you about the Ten Commandments, the 2 tablets of stone, okay? And the Ten Commandments are the basic principles upon which the law is based. Mm-hmm. But Moses was also given 5 books of the law, the history of the nation, prophecy of the future, in the 5 books that are called the 5 books of Moses. He was given the 5 books of Moses from the top of Horeb, Mount Sinai, containing the laws, statutes, judgments, economic policy under which there are no poor people, the agricultural policy where you don't need chemical fertilizers and all of that poisons the land and the food and the water, and the land lays fallow every 7 years. It's the Sabbath year, just as there is a Sabbath, 7th day of the week is a Sabbath where people are supposed to rest.
So did both these items then were then placed in the temple where Solomon's King Solomon's temple?
We have to get the ark was constructed at Sinai,
right?
By Aaron, Moses' brother. When Moses came down with the 2 tablets of stone and the 5 scroll books of the law, which is known as the Torah, or in Christianity it's known as the Pentateuch. It's the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Okay, and it's the first 5 books in the Bible in the Old Testament. The Bible begins at Genesis. Okay, so he was given the 5 scroll books of the law and the tablets of stone, and Aaron constructed the Ark of the Covenant. The 5 books contain the covenant, the contract that the 12 tribes of Israel made with God at Sinai, that they would keep his law forever and teach it to their children in perpetuity, to keep them free from oppression.
I'll just throw in a very contentious point here, probably as far as you're concerned, Marty, and that would be that I don't dispute that these physical objects exist. I think, the stone does exist, but I'm sure the ark exists somewhere. Where I would differ from you is that I would say that that was possibly given to them by another race, but not necessarily the God of the universe. Where I am is that it was possibly some advanced Anunnaki or extraterrestrial race that created man some hundreds of thousands of years earlier. But I know that's not your belief, but that's why I'm still interested in all of the physical art, the physical side of this, the fact that there is an ark, and I'm fascinated as to where it might be, because it is of massive significance, regardless of whether you believe my version of it or your version of it. It's still of massive significance. But
are you going to let me give my version of it?
Well, you are giving your version of it.
Yeah, but you brought in now extraterrestrials.
Sure.
Okay, and God is the ruler of the universe, so by definition he is an extraterrestrial.
Okay.
All right. So we agree to that degree, and the fact that if you read, and I know you've looked at it, if you read Exodus in the Bible, it describes on the top of Horeb, Mount Sinai, it describes by day there's a cloud of smoke, which by night became a fire in the sky, with strange noises, great heat. The people were warned not to approach, and some of them did and were burned.
Which in one of my shows I've described as a UFO, basically.
Exactly. Well, yeah, that is exactly what it was. It was a UFO, because the lights in the UFO at night would shine through the smoke screen.
Right.
But by daytime it was a cloud of smoke, and obviously just a cloud of smoke, because the lights, in daylight, they wouldn't be shining through it. And as confirmation of that, Sinai is not volcanic.
Right.
And also it moved off the top of Horeb in Mount Sinai and travelled, and when it moved, the 12 tribes of Israel, about 3 million people at that time, followed it. When it stopped, they stopped and camped. When it moved, they followed it. When it stopped, they stopped and camped. It provided them with everything that they needed, provided them with food, and water, and it prevented their shoes and their clothes from wearing out for 40 years. And that's a very strange volcano, isn't it?
Certainly is.
Yeah.
There's lots of strange things in the Bible.
Yeah. So anyway, to go back to the Ark of the Covenant, Aaron built the Ark of the Covenant, and in order to contain the covenant, which was the 5 scroll books that were given to Moses and the 2 tablets of stone with the 10 commandments on. So that was the covenant. The covenant is a contract between God and the people, the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, and in it contains blessings for keeping it and curses, which are the penalty clauses for not keeping it. And all of that was kept in the Ark of the Covenant. So the Ark of the Covenant contains the law, statutes, judgments, economic policy, agricultural policy, the healthy, balanced diet, the history of the tribes of Israel, and the tablets of stone.
Okay, so how long after that the Ark of the Covenant was created was it that it was placed in Solomon's temple?
Well, they went through the wilderness for 40 years,
right?
Carrying the stone on the pole and also carrying
the
Ark of the Covenant for 40 years. And then eventually, under King David, they had what was known as the tabernacle, which is also described in the Old Testament, which was made with cloth and curtains and frames, like a tent type of thing. And then eventually Solomon built, King David's son Solomon built the temple on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem, and the Ark was placed inside what was known as the Holy of Holies. The temple itself, the outer court of the temple, is known as the holy place, but the inner sanctum is known as the Holy of Holies, and that's where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. And that is the Holy of Holies, that particular spot, because that was where, hundreds of years previously, Abraham had built an altar to sacrifice his son Isaac. Okay, so that place, Abraham with his son Isaac sanctified that place as the holiest place on earth.
And this is
and that's where that was where the Holy of Holies inside Solomon's temple was built, over that spot, and that's where the Ark of the Covenant was placed.
Right. Just go for a short break, Marty.
Okay.
We'll chart the journey of the Ark and the stone.
Okay.
And after the break, we're going to find out that some students from Scotland actually nicked it from under the throne of the Queen. Join us after the break.